Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to the inaugural episode of the Hill Country Artist Podcast. And as my first guest, I have Elaine Capers. Elaine, thank you so much for joining me for this podcast.
No, I'm thrilled to be here.
Elaine, I've wanted to do this podcast for some time. The number, quality of artists in Kerrville, Kerr County, Hunt, and the Hill Country is just amazing. And I'm so thrilled that you would come down and visit with us today about yourself.
I'm very pleased to have been asked.
Let's start at the beginning. Where did you grow up?
Oh, grew up, born and raised in Fort Stockton, which is way west Texas on the way to El Paso, and was raised there. Could not have asked for a better place to grow up, and grew up with 17 cousins in the same town. And you couldn't swing a dead cat without hitting somebody in my family. We had, in the summertime, the museum that's there is called the Annie Riggs Museum. It's an old hotel that was run by Annie Riggs back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And when I was a kid, it was a museum. And there was famous artists that lived there in Fort Stockton, Willie Reed Rowe. And bless her heart, she gave art lessons to the kids in Fort Stockton. And they let her have one of the hotel rooms at the Annie Riggs Museum. And you couldn't walk down the walkway to that very last room without smelling the paint and the turpentine. And I wasn't very good when I was 10 or 12, but the memories last forever. And as I became an adult, my aunt was a wonderful artist, and she had painted a picture for my mom, and it was just a picture of a yucca in bloom in the Davis Mountains. And I just loved it. And I said to my aunt, would you paint one like that for me? And she looked at me and said, no. And I was rather startled. I didn't quite know how to respond. She said, but I'll show you how. And she got me started. I had a show with a dear friend, Ben English, who's an author, lives in Alpine, but he graduated with my little brother in Fort Stockton. And we decided it would be a cool place to go back, and he have a book signing and me have an art show that just dealt primarily with the scenes in the West Texas area. And my aunt, who at the time was suffering with dementia, got to come to the art show and the book signing. And my cousin, her daughter, had taken me aside, and she said, now, sometimes Mom says some inappropriate things, so don't be surprised or with anything she might say. Don't get your feelings hurt. I said, okay. And she came and she looked around and she said, I don't know who did these paintings, but they're wonderful. And I looked at my aunt and I said, Adelia, this is all your fault. And she looked at me, what? And I said, you're the one that got me started. And I painted all of these pictures. And she had tears well up in her eyes, and she just walked around and looked.
I bet you did too.
Oh, I did. I really did.
So I would call Fort Stockton the Trans-Pecos. Is that what you would call it?
Yes.
And as unique as the Hill Country is, the Trans-Pecos is perhaps the most unique geographic part of Texas.
It is, and the least populated.
And so exactly that. Could you explain a little bit about what it's like to grow, first describe the geography of the Trans-Pecos, and what's it like to grow up in a place like that, recognizing that we're in the beautiful Hill Country?
To grow up in West Texas, it was desert. It was hot, but it was a dry heat, as they all say. And we had swamp coolers, the evaporative air conditioners to cool our homes because there was very little humidity. If we got up over 15% humidity, it was real awful, horrible day. And growing up in a town of about 8,000, like I said, with 17 cousins around, it was a wonderful place to grow up. We had mamas on every block because our friends were on every block. And the area itself, very arid, very hot in the summer, but again, a dry heat. It snowed occasionally in the winter, so we actually had seasons. And after a rain, which didn't happen very often, the wildflowers would bloom. And the whole area would just change overnight. It was just phenomenal. And living in Pecos, I could see the Davis Mountains to the south and Balmorhea, where the big earthen swimming pool is that's spring fed. Deep End is 30 feet deep. I could see the thunderheads building up over the Davis Mountains, and we would have gone, I don't know, days and days, weeks and weeks, months without rain. And I could see those thunderheads building up over the Davis Mountains. And I would be so lonesome for rain. I would drive to Balmorhea and hope that it would come on over the mountains and I could at least turn my windshield wipers on and smell the rain and feel the rain, and then know that the pastures would just be full of wildflowers the next day.
So what took you away from Fort Stockton? Did you go to school? Did you go to college? What happened next?
Went to college in San Angelo and then got married and moved to Pecos. And I went to work for the state when I was in Pecos. I worked for the school district for a while, and then I worked for the state. And I was able to do a little bit of my artwork as an adult, but raising a kid and having a job and being busy as parents are, I didn't have a lot of time for it. But I showed a little bit when they'd have a little arts and crafts festival in Pecos. And my booth was always called From My Kitchen Table because that was where I worked. But in Pecos, I went to work for the state, and then I did my waltz around Texas. I started out as dispatch for the Highway Patrol, and then I moved to Brownwood, 5 years with the Highway Patrol in Pecos. Then I moved to Brownwood, 5 years with the Highway Patrol in Brownwood, and so blessed to work with so many wonderful people. And the troopers would say, "You don't mess with me, because when I tell you to do something, you better go do it." And so the troopers felt that way about me. But I promoted from Brownwood and came to Kerrville. And I was able to buy a home in Kerrville because I knew this was where I wanted to retire. And the communications facility in Kerrville closed, and so I moved to San Angelo and was the supervisor for San Angelo and Ozona. And then I promoted again and went to Dallas and had all of the North Texas communications facilities that I supervised. And an opening came available in San Antonio, which was going to put me only an hour from home. And so I lateral transfer to San Antonio and worked as a regional supervisor for that area until I retired.
When did you the first time you moved to Kerrville, when was that?
2002.
And when were you able to retire full-time to Kerrville?
2013.
And when were you able to start your love and passion of painting as a more full-time occupation?
The day after I retired, 2013.
So what type of work do you like to do? Is it landscapes, portraits, animals? Tell me about your work.
I do landscapes. I do animals. I do birds. I did a series of birds of prey in watercolor and do landscapes in oils. And every now and then I need a break from painting Big Bend or painting Fort Davis, and I'll paint some flowers, which is not my usual style, but it breaks things up.
I went to Fort Davis for the first time 2 years ago and absolutely fell in love with it. I know this is going to sound naive, but I was stunned by the majesty of the Davis Mountains.
Yes.
I had no idea. I've lived in Texas all my life. And are you able to incorporate that, Fort Davis, those mountains, into your work even today?
Oh, yes. You can see my love of Big Bend and my love of the Davis Mountains in nearly everything I paint. I branch out a little bit and we'll paint Guadalupe Peak in the Guadalupe Mountains or something from McKittrick Canyon in the Guadalupe Mountains. But my love of the Davis Mountains and the Trans-Pecos and the Big Bend are a primary focal point for my art.
Also went to Big Bend for the first time. Somewhat ashamed to admit that as a native Texan. And the thing that really struck me about Big Bend, it was 3 distinct ecosystems. Of course, there's deserts, there's glorious mountains, and there's also along the river, an incredibly lush and green area. Do you paint all 3 of those areas, or do you specialize in one of them, or some other area that I didn't name?
No, I paint all 3. The standard ones that nearly everyone paints, the window that's up in the basin, and mule ears that's down close to the river, and Santa Elena Canyon that the river divides. But when the purple sage is in bloom, you don't expect to see that in such an arid, rugged terrain. And then there's just these spots of purple all over. And in the Big Bend State Park, that used to be a private ranch, and now it's a state park, there are springs here and there. And you can tell where they are because there's trees and grass, and it's just lush. And then you drive another 2 or 3 miles and it's back to rocks and dirt and desert.
I wanted to ask you to explore a little about the local art scene. What's it like to being a working artist in Kerrville in 2023?
In 2023, it's just an amazing explosion of artists here. I have an upcoming show in the end of September at the Art Center downtown, and there will be 7 of us in this particular show, and it'll be the week after the plein air painters come and paint Kerrville. And 5 of the 7 artists are professional artists, and I just feel like I'm the little tag along behind. But
you're a professional artist.
I've sold some things.
That so makes you a professional.
I guess that makes me professional. But these women are just incredible. And I see the art with the people that are in the Kerrville Art Club. I see the art that's produced out of the Guadalupe watercolor group. I know all the different art clubs that are in the area all have amazing artists. And I say that in trying to encourage people to join the art club, and they say, oh, I couldn't even draw a stick figure. You don't have to be an artist to appreciate it. Some people have the artistic creative gene, and some people have the appreciation gene. And those who appreciate are welcome to be among the artists because they appreciate our work. And anybody that's going to make us feel good about what we do, we want to be around those folks.
What would you say to, I'm going to just say the young girl except in 2023, who sees art, who appreciates it, has the opportunity to maybe learn under a current practicing artist? Would you tell them to encourage them to follow the passion you follow?
Oh, I tell them just do it. Every workshop you might have an interest in and can't afford to take it. If you find somebody or a group of bodies that you can paint with and glean from those artists, learn from those artists, do it. And I used to tell my daughter growing up, she said, if you ever had a saying that was all you, it would be just do it. Because I would tell her, go clean your room, just do it. Go clean your room. Study for that test, just do it. And with artists of all levels, just do it. And try all different things. Try watercolors, try oils, try acrylics, try pastels, try pencil. Just do it.
If people wanted to see any of your work, where would be the best place they could go, Elaine?
I have a Facebook page that's called Art by Elaine. I post a lot of things just on my Facebook page. It's just Elaine Capers. And I'm lucky enough to be able to show fairly often, either with the members show at KAC, the art club, the art center downtown, or with the art club, or with these beautiful women that I'm going to be showing with in September.
And I really wanted to thank you for taking the time to visit with me, and I greatly look forward to your show in September.
Thank you. I hope to see you then.
All right.